Hi everyone, welcome back for another recipe. Today I thought I'd put on my pastry hat and we're going to be doing some chocolatiering, making bonbons. And I'm going to be doing a bonbon that's inspired by the flavors of Sri Lanka. So some of my favorite flavors, we're going to do a coconut, pandan and cardamom flavored bonbon. So let's take a look at the ingredients and tools we're going to be needing in order to make these bonbons today. Over here, first starting with the outer shells, we have our chocolate that we're going to be using, as well as our cocoa butter and color. Now the chocolate that we're going to be using today for the outer shells is dark chocolate, and it's about 58.5% with a medium level of fluidity, about a 3 out of 5 on the scale, which is the same fluidity for our white chocolate that we're going to be using for the filling. The other ingredients for the filling are going to be, of course, our pandan leaves. We have some cardamom pods. Now I'm using a coconut puree today, but you could substitute that for coconut cream if you wanted to, although the puree is great in flavor. This is from the brand Pontier. And then we also have some cream, of course, 35% fat. Lastly, just to cut through some of that fattiness flavor, a little bit of acidity through lime zest. So here we have the tools we're going to be needing in order to make our bonbons. First, we have our polycarbonate molds. Now I'm using a half sphere molds today, but you can use any shape you really want. That's up to you. We have a metal bench scraper and some cotton balls in order to polish the polycarbonate molds. Otherwise, you're going to have a tough time getting those bonbons out. We have our large offset spatula, a few rubber spatulas as well to help us out, and then our thermometer. Now the last tool that I have over here is a paintbrush. That's generally in case you want to use cocoa butter on the outside for an extra color, but that's also optional. You could just do the plain dark chocolate shells. We have a wire rack with some parchment paper underneath as well. That's just to collect the extra chocolate so we don't waste any. So the first thing we're going to do is use those cotton balls to polish the polycarbonate molds. Now you really want to do a good job here. Use some pressure and really get also on the inside edges. We don't normally wash these polycarbonate molds with sponges or anything like that, because if little scratches come inside, your chocolate's going to set in there and you'll never be able to get them out afterwards once you've tempered it. So make sure that you go very well and go around all of these mold holes. First thing we're going to do is temper our cocoa butter colors. So for cocoa butter, we just want to melt it past about 45 degrees Celsius and then bring it down to about 32 before it can be used. There's no need to go back up again in temperature like we do with chocolate generally. Now this is going to be for the outside color of our bonbons, and as we said before, this stage is optional, but I'm going to add it because it looks very nice normally. So we're going to use some cold water bath just to bring down the temperature of the cocoa butter quicker. And then I'm going to test the temperature of it, making sure that I scrape everything around the edge of the jar back to the middle. So we want the true temperature of the cocoa butter. Take your thermometer and make sure that you are in the middle of the cocoa butter to get the true temperature. And we're aiming for 32 degrees Celsius. If you're up or below by about half a degree, that should be okay. My one is saying 33.0, so I only have to lose about half a degree. So I'm not going to use the cold water bath anymore because it's going to drop too quickly. I'm just going to stir to get that heat out. So you can do any kind of design you like, but personally I like the star pattern. So what I'm going to do is use my paintbrush and just flick, kind of like Jackson Pollock, into the molds. Very classical technique you see being used a lot nowadays in the culinary world. We don't want to add too much, or else it's going to be overkill. And what's also going to be important is once we're done spraying this cocoa butter everywhere, we're also going to clean the sides of the molds, or the edges I should say, around the outside. Best way to do that is just with a little bit of kitchen paper. So make sure you have that in hand as well. Okay. Now that we've got the color, going to take some kitchen paper, just a few pieces, fold it on top of itself, take the mold, place it, and just give it a pull across, clean the edge. Doesn't have to be perfectly clean, but we want to get the majority of it off. Okay, so now that 90% of the chocolate has melted, I've taken it off the heat to let the last 10% melt with the residual heat. That way the chocolate won't get too hot. We're going to be tempering this now. So as you're tempering chocolate, just remember we want to pass 45 degrees Celsius. And for dark chocolate, we're going to bring the temperature down now to about 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, anywhere in between that range. But at the same time as bringing down the temperature, we also need to stir the chocolate in order to realign the crystals that are inside of it. That's what gives it that shine. It also helps with the snap of the chocolate once it's been tempered properly. If you ever see chocolate that has like a Milky Way pattern through it, like white streaks, that's a sign of chocolate that hasn't been stirred enough during the tempering process. Now, there are many different ways you can cool this chocolate down faster in order to temper it. Today we're going to be using the water bath method, where we're just going to take some cold water, or ice bath method if you put ice cubes inside. But because I'm working with a small amount of chocolate, I don't really want to use ice cubes because it can set way too quickly and the temperature might drop below the 29 mark. And if that happens, I might have to retemper the chocolate right away from the beginning and bring it back up to 45 and then bring it back down again to 29. So I'd rather do it slowly, just with a little bit of cold water. Now, when you're starting this cold water method of chocolate tempering, just remember that whatever's on the edge of your bowl is going to set first, because that's what's going to get coldest first. So you always want to mix that back together with the chocolate in the middle before you start taking the true temperature of your chocolate. And get your thermometer ready as well, so that you can do that. Make sure that you are doing it in the middle of your chocolate bowl, not touching the bowl itself, because that's just the temperature of the bowl and not of your chocolate. Give it a couple shakes. I'm at about 34 degrees Celsius right now. So I gotta drop another 4 to 5 degrees. That's not that much, so I can use that water bowl again. Just for a couple of seconds this time. I'm gonna go in about 10-second increments. Spreading it around. Removing it from the water, scraping the edge of the bowl to bring everything back to the middle, stirring at the same time for the crystals, and then I'm going to check the temperature again. And now we're at 30.7, so I just have to go down by 1 more degree. I'm going to do that by stirring. Okay, now that the chocolate has come down to 29 degrees, I'm going to increase the heat again, going up to 31. And the way that I like to do this is by bringing my bain-marie, my water boiler setup, to a full rolling boil. And then I spin the bowl for 3-second intervals. Again, scraping what's around the edge, because now it's the hottest area, bringing it back to the chocolate that's in the middle that's colder, and hopefully with that 3-second increment, my chocolate should have gone up by 1 or 2 degrees. And if it hasn't, I'll do it again until I've reached the magic number, which is 31. You can be above about 1/2 degree or below 1/2 degree, and it's still going to work properly. Okay, now that the chocolate is tempered, we're going to pour the chocolate into the mold. I'm going to do half on this first one and then half on the second one, and I'm not pouring it everywhere. I'm just pouring it as much as possible on the back end. I'm then going to use my bench scraper to get the chocolate everywhere inside these molds. Now we are going to tip it upside down and tip out all the chocolates. All right, so currently the chocolate is setting. If I take a look underneath, I can see that they are pretty much all completely dripped out now. But if I try to put it upside down right now, the right way up, it's just going to sink back into the mold. So I'm going to let it relax like this until it's turned matte in color, and then we're going to remove the excess chocolate around it. We're going to remove the extra chocolate now from the outside of the bonbon molds. You know now it's ready when you can see that it's turning matte in color on the outside. But you don't want to let it go completely matte, because if it sets completely, it's going to crack as you're trying to remove it. Now, it's very important if you're using a metal bench scraper that you don't go in between the bonbon molds. You want to go right down the middle of them, otherwise they might also crack. So keep the angle low. And I like to say shimmy from side to side to remove the excess. And careful how you're traveling with your bench scraper right down the middle. So to begin making the ganache that's going to be going on the inside of our bonbons, I'm going to start by taking the pandan leaves, and they're going into an empty pot. And the cardamom, we're just going to crush that just to help release the flavor into our cream. You want to see the black seeds come out, and then add it into the pot along with the pandan. Next step, just going to turn the heat on a lower setting. We don't really want to bring the cream to a boil. We just want to infuse the flavor of the pandan and cardamom into the cream. Now, if you have all the time in the world, I actually recommend doing this step a day in advance so that the pandan and the cardamom can actually mingle together, and that flavor is going to come out a lot stronger than if you do it straight away. But if you're not planning on serving the bonbons the day of, that flavor will also happen automatically inside as you let them rest for a day or two. We're going to just bring it to about the scalding point of the cream. That's about 70 degrees Celsius. So when you see that first steam come out of it, we're going to turn the heat off. We don't want to let this boil. I'm also going to add my lime zest into my cream. Okay. Now, if you're making a small batch of this ganache filling, which I am doing today, you can use that warm cream, pour it into your white chocolate, or the other way around, and let the heat of the cream melt the chocolate. But if you're working in bigger batches, I recommend melting the chocolate separately, because you might not have enough heat in your cream to melt all that chocolate. If you make a mistake though, don't worry, you can always put everything together on a bain-marie and melt it together. It's just going to take longer for it to set before you can add it inside of your bonbon shells. If the temperature of the ganache, of course, is still too warm compared to the shells, it'll melt the shells through. So make sure that when you're using this filling later on, it's below 32 degrees Celsius, because that's the melting point of chocolate. Now that it's steaming, you see the initial steam has come. I'm going to take my white chocolate for today, pour it into my bowl, and I'm just going to mix it through. Well, I'm using induction, so it's okay to keep the pot back on the stovetop, because induction doesn't keep its heat in the stovetop. It's directly heating the base of the pot, which is why it's okay for me to do this. But if you're doing it on an electric or gas stove, do not mix it directly on the stovetop. Take it off the heat over here. Okay. Okay. Once that's mixed together, I'm also going to pour in the coconut puree. Make sure you scrape out the entire content of the container, especially if you're working in small batch recipes, because if you don't, it's a lot larger portion of the recipe that you're leaving behind. And we just want to stir this together until the shine comes back out. Now we're going to strain this, but I'm going to let them sit in the chocolate until it's cooled down completely till I need it, because that way the flavor can infuse a little bit longer. Also going to transfer it into a separate bowl now. Once the chocolate has cooled down a little bit, you can strain everything out to catch the cardamom and the pandan. If you prefer to keep the lemon zest texture inside, you can also add the zest a little bit later, but I'm taking it out today because I just wanted that flavor to infuse into the cream. And here we have it left. Okay, we are now going to fill the chocolate bonbon. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to open up our piping bag, fold the lip over itself. Now I like to put it into a container because that way it's very easy to fill. I don't have to hold it open with one hand. But before I pour it in at the end, I'm just going to triple check the temperature, making sure that it's not too hot. So I'm going to mix everything together. Final temperature check. It's below 32, we're at 29, that's perfect. We can pour in our coconut pandan and cardamom ganache. Okay, make sure to scrape it all out. Okay. After that, lift up the bag, twist it closed, and make just a small incision at the top, about 1 centimeter wide, and we're going to fill up the bonbon molds. Now that this is finished, we're going to put this into the freezer for about half an hour. For the final tempering process, we are remelted that last 200 grams of chocolate. This is going to be to coat the underside of the bonbons so we can close them, which is also the reason why we only filled the bonbons 90%, because we have to put a bottom at it, of course, otherwise the filling is just going to sink out when we flip it upside down. So this is the exact same process as we did before for the shells, no difference whatsoever. We have to first heat it up to 45 degrees Celsius, then drop it down to 29, 30, and after that bring it back up to 31. We are now at the final stages of closing the bonbons. The chocolate has been tempered, so we're going to pour the chocolate over the top like we did previously, trying to spread it out again a little bit. Don't have to go all the way over. We need to work quickly to make sure that the chocolate doesn't set before we're done closing it. So, use your long offset spatula, pull. You can see it's tempered properly. when it goes matte pretty much straight away when you're done. Just don't want to do this too often. All right. So we're going to remove the excess chocolate now, very gently shimmying from side to side. Take your time with this. Go. You see, if you press a bit too hard, they're going to break open. So take your time. Don't worry if one or two break, they're going to be your taste testers. Okay. And then we pop them back into the freezer after this, just to make sure that they are completely set. That's a good sign already. That normally only happens when the chocolates are tempered properly. You can see they're already starting to come out, but I'm going to keep them in the fridge anyway, just for a little bit. And now we've come to the last stage, the unmolding of the bonbons. I've kept them in the freezer just for about 10 minutes, just so the chocolate helps to retract from the mold a little bit. But I very gently tip them upside down. I can already hear the first few falling, and with one tick, we release them. Some might break, so do be careful when you're ticking them. And also not to touch them with your dirty fingers. If you want to get the marks on them, wear gloves.